Hey there, welcome to part 2 of the milk jug side tables. We're going to do the second milk jug side table. It's a continuation of the one that I already made. So let's get to it. Alright, so here's my other milk jug that was all rusted. I had access to a sandblaster, so I ran it through a sandblaster. Got a majority of the rust off of it, and now I'm going to prime it so that I can paint it later. Alright, I got it all primed up now. Now, a friend of mine did give me this. It had been sitting around for a while. So with the rust, there are rust holes throughout this. But that's okay, it's going to give it character. Now I'm going to let this all dry up, and then I'm going to come back in with this rugged black. So it's kind of going to have a nice texture to it. It's going to be black, but it's going to be textured. Kind of like the last one. It was already pre-painted. It was kind of a rugged brown. It had some nice texturing to it. Makes it look really cool. So we'll let this dry. Come back in. We'll paint it up. Let that dry. And then we'll take care of the wood. See you soon. Rewind! Zoom in and slow-mo. Now, would you look at that mess? Do you see all that splatter? That is totally unacceptable. I'm not liking this. We're going to have to do something different. Alright, so what I ended up doing was I took some sandpaper and I sanded off all of the excess texture that was on there. I didn't like it, so I gave us that little bit of black. And now I am going to be putting on some automotive black paint. Hey guys, come here. A little bit closer. All right. Now, don't tell anybody this, but in the next segment, I accidentally set the camera wrong and I chopped off most of my head. And I also lost my microphone, this guy right here, So the sound isn't so great because it was on the floor and it couldn't really pick up my voice. So sorry about that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next segment. Bye. Alright guys, this is the second half of the board that I cut in half in the last video. So I'm going to take my handy dandy sander, sand it down, clean up the edges, and then get ready to put some stain on it. So let's get going. Hey, remember, safety first. Alright, so one of the things that I did on this one that I didn't do on the last one was that I actually kind of rounded all the edges that are going to be here on the top. The reason for that is I have a couple of grandsons, and this one is going to actually sit on the opposite side of the couch in more of an open area, and I don't want it to be something that they could hurt themselves on. Whereas the first one is kind of tucked into a little bit of a corner, and there's no risk of them hurting themselves on that one. So that's why I did the rounding. So let's get ready to do some staining. All right, I mentioned in one of my previous projects about using big cartons to lift up your project to do some staining or painting. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to lay these underneath. Now I'm using an old piece of plywood in case any of the stain drips on it. It's something that I don't care if it gets ruined. You can always put down newspaper underneath. You just want to make sure that the newspaper isn't touching the project that you're working on, because it will stick to it. Now, one of the things that I have found to be great is I happen to get this at Weimar. You can probably get it at any hardware store or anything like that. It's a bag of rags. And they're white t-shirts. So if you don't happen to have any old t-shirts floating around that you don't mind getting ruined, and this is fairly inexpensive, and it comes with quite a few t-shirts in it, and you just cut them up into little pieces that you can use for the staining. It's a great, great tool. Once again, we're using gun stock. Love this stain. Some crevices on the sides of the wood, so you got to get it a little bit thicker and just dab it in there. Don't worry about it being too wet. You go in, get it into all the nooks and crannies, and if you don't like how thick it is, just come along with the rag. I'm going to grab this one, and then you can kind of just wipe off the excess so that the stain isn't as thick. Now, being on the live edge side, it is going to be a lot thicker, or a lot darker on the sides than it will be on the top. Oh, look at how rich that is. Doesn't that look great? Now, I don't know how to get around it, but my fingers do have a tendency to cramp up on me sometimes. All right, now we're going to do the second side. All right, I'm going to let this dry before we apply the polyurethane. All right, guys, it's time to put on the poly. Now this is the sponge brush that I was talking about in the last segment. Welcome back. While you guys were gone, I went ahead and put on a poly on the bottom side of the tabletop, and I put on my second coat. So let's grab the milk jug and start assembling the top to it. All right, guys, here it is. Our second milk jug side table, all done. It looks all nice and neat. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.